audio is jacked up. We'll leave the screen for a bit. People can hear us. Buddy, Josh Engleman, Adam Scherer, game 2, breaking down just basically, I want to say the same slate, but it's not, because pitching is going to change everything here. Before we had Clayton Kershaw, Tyler Glasnow went well for the Kershaw backers, not so much for the Tyler Glasnow backers. Today, we get a little bit different of a setup. Tony Gonsolin opening for the Dodgers, Blake Snell going for the Rays. Snell looking like today's version of Kershaw. Adam, I'm going to throw it to you right now, but I have no idea if your audio is actually going to come through. I will learn it as you speak. Nope, it's not. But I can get to you quickly. Having crazy audio issues on my end, everybody. Apologies in advance. For some strange reason, Bluetooth is not a thing that I have any longer. At least not on this desktop. Hence the cans cable. I believe now audio works. Give me a test.
So this slate is different than we're good now?
Yeah, we're all good.
Okay. Yeah, so it's different than yesterday because we're already to the point, not as much as we will be later on in the series, but already to the point where we're at 2 starting pitchers that you're like praying they get 5 innings. They're in the Dodgers case, probably not. And in Snell's case, it's probably a coin flip. So you're already at 2 pitchers. Like yesterday, the pitchers were great plays, even though they were expensive, because not only were they really good, but you knew that they were going to be allowed to go as deep as they possibly could into the game. And that's reinforced by Glasnow throwing 112 pitches or whatever it was. Kershaw was going deeper into that game had the Dodgers not broken it open. Yeah. So it's different today. Now the pricing is cheaper on the pitching. So it does factor that in. Like if you gave me Blake Snell at whatever Glasnow's price was yesterday, I wouldn't be very interested. But at the pricing that they're at, it's still fine. But it does change, I think, the dynamics of the slate, because now, whereas yesterday we kind of went on that tangent where we were saying, if you build a lineup with Clayton Kershaw in it, and then you try and build basically the same lineup, but flip Kershaw, play 2 different hitters than Kershaw and like your worst hitter, basically, that the projections weren't going to be remotely similar. It's a little bit different today because neither of these pitchers should or are particularly likely to go super deep into this game.
Yeah, the Glasnow piece of this is driving me crazy because he was perfectly set up for a really nice outcome, and I never expected him to be even remotely close to that amount of pitches without being dominant. I didn't think it was possible for him to throw 115 pitches or whatever it was and have such a ridiculous stat line, 6 earned and however many walks it ended up being, which was not a real fun number. Really annoying because I had a ton of Clayton Kershaw, Tyler Glasnow lineups. Didn't need the Bellinger homer, but it didn't matter all that much. And then it just kind of got gross. I'm excited. I've got my sim run. I just picked up our projected ownership. So as you get in the door, guys, please hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. That's the biggest piece we've got here. That one helps us out a ton. And I'm going to give a shout out to our presenting sponsor. That would be Yahoo Sports. They are the presenting sponsor of the MLB Strategy Show every morning. We'll touch on them in a little bit. I'm loading in ownership because I want to take a peek at this stuff. And other than I only have to fix the Kike Hernandez name, which is always a blast. How could people have... it drives me insane that people have multiple names. I hate it so much. It drives me... it breaks everything. Literally everything. Kike Hernandez. Done. All right. I've got everything I need here, and right out of the gate, I'm getting quite a bit Blake Snell in the captain spot. So let's just start with Blake Snell overall. How do you feel about him relative to what we had yesterday? Is he going to be a guy that you expect to have in everything?
I don't think so. I kind of think, and obviously this is early in the day. I haven't run a bunch of crunches or anything, but I think he's projected to be overowned. This is a really inefficient pitcher facing a really good Dodgers team. he does have good strikeout stuff. There's no doubt about that. But he also walks guys. He goes deep in the counts. You have a Dodgers team that's just full of good hitters that will work counts and that can hit. Even their lefties, hit left-handed pitching well also. So I don't know. I think that whereas yesterday I thought Kershaw was coming in under-owned even at the really expensive price tag, I kind of think Snell might be coming in a little bit over-owned because on one hand he is cheap and that's nice. Like he's easy to fit into lineups, but I don't know. I don't love the spot for him. The Dodgers are really good. He just does not go deep in the games because he's so inefficient with his pitches. I think that it's a lot easier today to pivot from him to bats and hope that you get a team that goes off than it was yesterday.
Interesting. He's coming up a lot for me. Just like Kershaw yesterday, in some form or fashion, in everything. 30% ownership in the captain spot, which I think I agree is a tad too high, but just 20 in the utility spot. To me, that is just too low. Checked out a couple props before the day started. Snell sitting at 5.5, so that felt pretty normal to me. I gave him 5 innings, on my first lap through. That gave him like 5.7 strikeouts as the projection. So I felt happy with that as a baseline. And if that's the case, I think that I end up with quite a bit of Snell, more so in the utility spot than the captain spot. Did we learn anything from game one? Anything that you're trying to take away just from roster construction, or I don't know, like anything in general that you take away from game one that you apply to game two?
Not really, because for one, I do think it's different with the pitching. For two, I did really well yesterday, so I'm not. I don't know. I feel like I didn't learn anything because what I did worked, and I have no idea if that's because I played well or because I got lucky. So
Sure.
I'm going to end up doing what I did yesterday, and I still don't know any more really than I did yesterday. But yeah, I mean, I think that the reason that I view Snell a little bit differently is I think if you get a home run from someone like Mookie Betts or Corey Seager or Randy Arozarena, they probably outscore Blake Snell today. I didn't think that was the case yesterday. Like if you got a home run from these guys, I still thought they would lose to Kershaw if they didn't
Yeah. That
do a
makes
bunch
sense.
more.
That makes sense.
So I think that it's a lot more comparable now amongst the expensive hitters and the pitching than it was yesterday.
Okay, I hear you there. Getting my last little update here before I could actually take a look at some of my exposure. So I don't know if you saw the optimal from yesterday on DraftKings, but Kike Hernandez in that lineup.
Yeah.
So you needed a bench guy. Does that change your outcome at all for today? Are you more likely to take a pinch hitter or a relief pitcher?
Relief pitcher, maybe. That is something that I kind of was thinking about as the slate went on because, I mean, it's obvious, but it's just something I hadn't really thought through, I guess, as clearly as I should have. That, like, in baseball, you can win with taking a zero from a hitter.
Yeah.
So, like, my thought was kind of I don't want to mess with relief pitchers too much outside of the largest field tournaments because I don't know if they're going to get into the game and they might take a zero, blah blah blah. But that rostering a hitter doesn't guarantee you're not taking a zero either. So getting the low ownership on relievers, I think, does make sense. One thing I was thinking about, and I don't really know how like actionable it is because of what we talked about before, where with it being a single game slate, you don't want to over correlate too much. You don't want to worry about that too much. But if you were hand building like a lineup or two, it's something that I think you could keep in mind because you're trying to get really as easy a path to a win from that one or two lineups as you can. Whereas when you're playing 150, you're kind of just spraying bullets and hoping that something hits. But thinking about what relievers pitch in what types of games, like if the Dodgers are in a close or relatively close game, they're going to prefer Baez over Kenley Jansen.
Yeah.
So, like yesterday, I think that if you were going to pair a Dodgers reliever with Clayton Kershaw, for example, you would have gotten a little bit of a better correlation going with Baez than with Kenley Jansen. If you were stacking the Dodgers and didn't have Kershaw, then maybe you would want Kenley Jansen because you're hoping the Dodgers just blow the game open and Kenley Jansen pitches in a low leverage situation. So it's kind of the same thing like today, thinking about the Rays. If Blake Snell pitches well for 5 innings, you're probably going to get Nick Anderson and Peter Fairbanks coming in. If the Dodgers jump out to a big lead and it's not a competitive game, the Rays are probably not going to use those guys because they want them as fresh as they can be for competitive games. So again, I don't know how actionable it is, especially if you're playing a lot of lineups, but I do think you can think through relief pitching kind of correlations with starters if you're like hand building a lineup or two.
What do you so let's say we're putting people into Fantasy Cruncher to run some lineups for today. What's a realistic projection for pinch hitters or relief pitchers that you could add where you expect to actually get them in crunches? Because in theory, like the actual projection you're putting in for a relief pitcher is very minimal. Just if you're thinking like percent chance that he's in the game times whatever you think a normal outcome is for an inning, it's minimal. So I assume you have to massage that a little bit to get to these guys.
Yeah, and I didn't do it yesterday because I wasn't too worried about it. I was playing. I'm playing 3 max in tournaments. I'm not max entering, so I didn't really care. But I did notice that I didn't get to relievers at all in crunchers. So I think that where I was multiplying hitter projections by like 1.5 or 1.75, I would expect that I needed to multiply pitcher projections by like 2 or something, or relief pitcher projections by like 2 or something like that. Get them from 2 points to 4 or 5
Okay.
for it to work. And if you're doing it with bench players, I think that's the case as well. But one thing to keep in mind too is that with the pinch hitters, like yesterday, it was really, really obvious you were going to get either Kike Hernandez or AJ Pollock, at least one of the two, pinch hitting, because unless the game really got out of hand and there was no matching up going on, Jock Peterson wasn't getting an at bat after after Glasnow left the game. Like the Rays even put another lefty on their active roster, lefty reliever on their active roster for this reason. So you knew that one of those guys was getting at least one, maybe 2 at bats. Today, maybe a little bit different. Like you look at the Dodgers, you assume they're going to have Pollock and Kike in the lineup. Maybe they pinch hit for Kike late with Jock Peterson. Maybe they don't. They're probably not pinch hitting for AJ Pollock even against a righty. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit different because I don't think that the pinch hitters are quite as guaranteed as they were yesterday. On the other side, you have Gonsolin going for the Dodgers, so I don't expect that you even have Hunter Renfroe in the lineup. And who knows if he gets into that late in the game or not. So I do think it's worth considering from a probability standpoint. Like yesterday, you absolutely knew you were getting pinch hitters for Hunter Renfroe and for Jock Peterson, or at least if the game was relatively competitive. Today, I'm not really sure that there's anyone that is a lock to be pinch hit for in like the 6th inning.
Oh, I think this one's going to be tricky tonight. So I think that we should take a little bit of a look at some of the ownership that we're getting. And I mentioned before, Blake Snell, 30% in the captain spot. The next closest guy is 11.5, Austin Meadows. And then basically everybody else is somewhere in like the 1 to 5 range, all things considered. How do you want to approach rostering hitters at the captain spot? Is that sort of spray and pray, or do you have an actual focus?
It is, but also one thing I noticed yesterday was that, and again, yesterday was a different slate because of Kershaw being expensive and the priority on Kershaw.
Yeah.
But yesterday, I was getting to a lot of cheap hitter captains. I got second in the $150 yesterday with Kevin Kier, Meyer, and captain, and it kind of reminded me of the approach I take often in NFL Showdown, where I pay down at captain, hope that my guy just houses a touchdown because my flex players are like the 5 best plays on the slate. And if my cheap guy scores, I'm in really, really good shape. That's kind of what my lineups yesterday reminded me of in tournaments was hopefully the cheap batter does well. In this case, Kiermaier did well. I also had Yandy Diaz as captain. And then I have Mookie Betts, I have Kershaw, I have the really good players at flex because I can afford them. Today, I think it might be a little bit easier to get those actual good hitters at captain because, like I said, I don't think that getting to either of the pitchers is as much of a priority. And even if you do want to get to Snell, he's just less expensive than Kershaw was. So it'll be easier, I think, to build a lineup where you play, let's say, Mookie Betts at captain than it was yesterday. Because if you were playing Mookie at captain yesterday, you were pretty much either giving up Kershaw or you were playing relievers and bench players. So I think getting to good hitters at captain will be a bit easier today.
Yeah, that's where it gets tricky for me. Like I had Mookie Betts show up at 2% in the sim, but it's not like that's crazy. I don't know how to find the proper separation for hitters, because everybody seems similar. Like I got 2.2% Mookie Betts. He's projected for 3.6. The margins there are not all that interesting. Someone like what would be another example? Like a Rosarena. I mean, that's a guy that I find like really, really difficult to get to. Same thing for Corey Seager. Same thing, in a way for Mookie Betts. Although I think it's a little bit different for today. How can we approach building out lineups with expensive hitters, knowing that they're always going to be projected similarly, I mean, worse, I guess, than the pitcher? That's where it gets confusing to me. Like, who's a better play today? Mookie Betts or Tony Gonsolin? Betts $600 more expensive.
Mookie, I think.
Okay.
That's also because I don't expect Gonsolin to go deep into this game whatsoever.
So I gave him 3 innings. Feels about right. I mean, like,
I would say two or three is my guess.
All depends on the success. Like,
well,
I
not
don't think
entirely those.
Right. Like, well, if it's going well, I think 3 is like perfect.
Yeah.
I don't think it can become like 6 or anything.
Right.
That's
that. What I was saying. Like, he can pitch as good as he wants. I don't think he's going 6 innings.
Yeah. Like, if it's going well, he's going to take a single lap through the order, I would imagine.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for like, look at last series with the Braves. You had AJ Minter, who had not started a game since like 2015 when he was in college, go 3 innings because he was just lights out, and it was like, yeah, okay, we'll give him 3. So yeah, I agree he can do that. I was saying, I don't think he's going 5 or 6. He threw 41 pitches 3 days ago.
Does it matter to you? So let's just use those guys as an example. Betts 22% owned in the utility, Gonsolin 24, essentially the same captain ownership. You would, in theory, be more interested in Betts than Gonsolin.
Yeah, I think Betts just has the higher ceiling. I mean, if Gonsolin somehow gets to a home run worth of points, I would be surprised. And I don't think he's getting much more than a home run worth of points. Whereas, Betts hits a home run, steals a base. I don't think Gonsolin can get there.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Else calling? No, not interested. Whoever you are. Any bats that immediately stand out to you that you think are just clearly underowned, or guys that you want to focus on given the matchup?
So as far as value goes, I mean, Kiermaier's 4K. I would assume you're getting to him in cash lineups at the very least.
Yeah.
At the same time, he's a 50% owned hitter. I don't know how necessary he is today, considering you don't have like a Kershaw to pay for. But I think that's a really good value. Obviously, you still have a really cheap price tag on Margot at 5,200. If Yandy Diaz is in the lineup, he's sub 5K. So there's still value there from the Tampa side. But again, I just like to back to your point about like the chances of success for the hitters at captain. I think it's tricky because the best hitters obviously can just score 0 really easily, and so when you look at projections, or you think about range of outcomes, it's really easy to see how any one hitter fails, because Mookie Betts can give you a 0 captain, and your pitcher is probably not going to. But I think it's just really important to think in terms of ceiling also, and kind of embrace the volatility there, because Mookie Betts can pretty easily just score 30 points for you at captain, and I would be shocked if either pitcher gets there today. Shocked might be a little strong. I'd be shocked if Gonsolin got there. I'd be surprised if Snell got there.
If Tony Gonsolin gets the 30 fantasy points,
30 captain.
Oh, okay.
20. I mean, he'd have to strike out like 7 out of 9 probably.
Yeah, that would be. They'd have to leave him in longer than we would ever expect. I think
Minter scored 20. I think in the game where he went 3 innings and struck out like 7 guys.
That's a big one. Yeah. So last night we had Brandon Lau, Willie Adames, Renfroe, Barnes, Jock, Zunino all hang 0s. Yeah, Rosarania, Diaz 2 and 3. So
it's tough because it goes back to your point of baseball not being normally distributed. Like, you can't look at the projection and treat it the same as you would in like basketball, for example, because one swing from Mookie Betts and he hits Blake Snell's average projection.
Yep.
But at the same time, there's going to be 25-30% of games where he gets a 0. So I think I'd said it yesterday, and I do stand by this. Like, in tournaments, you should probably be weighting ownership a little bit more than you normally would, or at least just as much as you would. Like, definitely shouldn't be like caring too much about mean projections in tournaments here.
Just to let you know, since you and I talked about this slate a lot, not just on the show but post show, 100% Blake Snell is happening again in my utility. So just be prepared for that sort of same outcome when you start your crunches. Uh, and then it's a ton of Margot, and I'm getting to a lot of Austin Meadows in the captain spot, which I hate. Is there an upper bounds for your captain hitter spot to you? Like, to me, I would never want like 50% of someone unless the price is broken. That seems like a really to thread that needle on. Oh, this is the guy that has the disparate outcome to everything else. Do you have any thoughts on like hitter caps for captain spots? Utility a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that you wouldn't want it to get too crazy. Looking back at what I would have had yesterday if I played 150 lineups, looks like my highest owned would have been like 31% Yandy Diaz, which I'd have been fine with because again, you don't necessarily need the highest scorer at captain.
Right.
It matters what it gets you in the rest of your lineup as well. And he was a really good combination of a chance to do well. Like he does have power, he can hit, and he let me get Kershaw plus Betts or Kershaw plus Glasnow or Kershaw plus Bellinger, whatever. So getting to a lot of him made sense. And then I kind of looked through the rest, 10% Manny Margot, 9% Mookie. So that's just a completely different build. 8% Renfro, 5% Peterson, 7% Kiermaier. So it was a lot of yesterday, paying down a captain. And so I don't think that the 30% for Yandy was too much
Mm-hmm.
just because it got me a lot of, really high upside lineups. But, I wouldn't want to, it's different than like football where you're going to be pretty comfortable just jamming in some spots, 75% of some running back because he's going to get 20 catches and 10 targets or
Yeah.
whatever.
I'm assuming captain ownership, we're basically going to be treating like it's normal main slate stuff, where you're probably not getting super concentrated on any individual hitter on a big, like a 10 gamer. The chances of you having like 60% of a hitter is going to be pretty low.
Yeah. And one thing I did in Cruncher to help out with that is I didn't set any exposure caps for flex players. I kind of just, I set randomness and I let it run and it did fine. But I went and I looked at our projected captain ownership and then I just capped every player right around their, kind of rounded, just, 30, 20, 10 basically, but just capped guys at their projected captain number and then ran crunches.
Okay.
So not saying that they're going to be capped there in my lineups because I create many more lineups than I play, but that way I'm not getting Cruncher giving me 75% Clayton Kershaw captain because that's how he projects.
That makes some sense. Guys, I want to touch on a couple of the things going on around these parts today. First and foremost, another giveaway. Head to the @Awesemo_com Twitter account. Easy peasy so far, right? Right. All you have to do is check out the pinned tweet, which is a giveaway for tonight's game, game 2. So we're sticking in the baseball realm. All you have to do, reply to that tweet. We'll follow the directions in the graphic first and foremost. That should be the first thing that you do. You have to predict how many hits the Dodgers will have tonight. If you get that number correct and you follow all of the other rules that are in the graphic, you can win a year of Awesemo Plus MLB. It'll be a random drawing for everybody that gets that result correct, but you can win a year. That is a gigantic value. And so let's say that it gets activated for the 22nd of October. You would have it until the 22nd of October, 2021. You get the full year, 365 days of MLB Plus Platinum Pass. It's a $320 value. I recommend going to check it out. If you're just looking for free content today at Awesemo.com. NFL Lineup Builder, free. MLB Rankings, free. PGA Top Golfers, free. A lot of good stuff today. You can find that all at Awesemo.com. If you're looking to take in some content, we've got 4 more shows going on today. 11 a.m., so immediately after this one. NFL Strategy Show with Laffy, Matt, and Kyle. They'll be breaking down the entire NFL slate. MLB Live Before Lock at 7:15 Eastern Time. That'll be Jake and Terry again. We're not done yet, though. 2 more shows after that. 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. PGA Live Before Lock. Ben Raza, Jason Roslin, talking Zoizo Championship. And then finally, at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, MMA Live Before Lock. Jason and Pete breaking down the UFC pay-per-view for this weekend. Khabib, Justin Gaethje. It's going to be a big one. I'm excited. We're going to have a ton of content going on for MMA this weekend. Saturday's going to be a big one.
Does that really start at 10:30 a.m. Saturday?
The pay-per-view? Yeah.
Okay, because
main card starts at like 3, I think.
I think the main card starts at 2.
That sounds right to me.
And that's what I've been seeing, but I just assumed that
It was
the
like Abu
prelim
Dhabi
started
time.
at 2.
No,
And then I looked at the I
early
looked at
prelims at 10:30 a.m.
okay.
Pay-per-view card starts at 2.
Yeah, I was looking at the DraftKings like tournaments and stuff today, and I was like, oh, 10:30. I guess I'm waking up on Saturday to watch MMA.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be so much fun.
Well, I
So much
like it
fun.
too because I never get around to starting on football until MMA ends, and so when that's at like 1 in the morning, it's really annoying. But having MMA out of the way will be nice.
One last call, guys. Hit that like button. It helps us out a ton, but subscribe to the channel. That helps us out even more. If I'm looking at ownership right now, guys that stand out to me, Zanino looks to be a bit under-owned in the utility spot as far as I'm concerned. Fully unowned in the captain spot. He's the type of guy that I think would be interesting there, just because when he's successful, it is likely home runs. What do you think of Meadows at 12% in the captain spot? Is that just naturally too high? It's what I got in the sim, but it feels weird to see. I mean, I guess the weird part is that he's 8,700 in the captain spot.
Right, that's the thing. I think it seems about right because he accomplishes pretty much everything that I was talking about when I was talking about my hitter captain exposures yesterday. He's cheap, so he's going to let you get whatever else you want in the rest of your lineup. He's extremely good, so it's not like you're sacrificing your upside there at hitter. He may not be Mookie Betts in terms of talent or probability of succeeding, but he's got a ton of power and he can very easily be the highest scoring hitter on the slate. Like out of the Tampa guys, you would expect him to be the highest scoring hitter, really. So it's, I think, I think it's just a mispricing, and it's pretty much where it should be.
Okay. I'm with you. I don't really understand how he can be that price. It makes him look like the best captain option in my opinion, and I'm going to have to deal with that in some way. Don't know what that way is quite yet. Yeah, no matter what I do, no matter how I rank these lineups, no matter what I click on here, Blake Snell isn't 100% of everything that I'm doing, whether that's at the captain spot or the
Like I said, I
utility.
haven't run mine yet, but I'd be surprised if I have that problem today. I think I just bump hitters enough that it kicks Snell out of some. Like I'm going to end up in Cruncher, and when I choose my lineups, I'm going to end up with guys like Mookie projected higher than Snell.
Um, yeah, I had, man, it's gonna. I have Snell for 15 right now. Mookie a bit less than that.
So I think Mookie I'll end up with around 15 or 16. So like it's gonna, I think, just kind of
That's a big number, man.
Yeah, I multiply my hitters.
Oh yeah. Like I'm doing the 1.5 math here too, but that still feels high. I mean, I get it. I understand where you're coming from there. I look at that Blake Snell number of 20% projected ownership in the utility spot, and I just can't see a scenario where that is 50% ownership to Blake Snell just seems incorrect to me. The same way that it felt yesterday.
I don't know. I don't think he's got a brutal matchup. He's been all season long literally incapable of making it of not using 105 pitches to throw 4 or 5 innings.
Is that a problem though? I mean, I know what you're saying, but like I don't care how efficient he is. I just care that he doesn't get blown up.
I mean, the reason he's inefficient is because he also walks guys and puts guys on base and then doesn't get deep into the game. And he's facing a ridiculously good team. I expect they'll have a shorter leash on him than they did Glasnow because they saved the bullpen yesterday. They're down 1 game. I don't think they're leaving Snell out there to find out what happens on pitch 108 or 109. Like I am very concerned he doesn't go more than 4 or 5 innings.
Okay, so let's have this conversation then. What do you think you need from Snell for him to be a relevant pitcher for today? And 2, I think I lost my second question. Go ahead with that first one, and I'll see if I can remember whatever I was trying to think about.
I think you need him around his projection. If he gets you 14 or 15, that's fine. You're probably, like yesterday, it would have played yesterday. It wouldn't have been perfect because you had so many hitters do well, but there would have been some good lineups with 15 points from Blake Snell. But if he comes south of that, I think that you're probably in trouble because I just think there's going to be, I guess, not more offense than yesterday because obviously there was a ton of offense yesterday. I think that it's more likely that there is offense today than it was yesterday. Obviously it ended up happening yesterday, but I think that the probability going into the game is higher today than yesterday of there being very good bats that you need. So I think that, again, if Snell hits 15 points at his salary, chances are all of the offense doesn't come from expensive bats. So Snell ends up fitting in the lineups well. But I think that if he comes a bit shy of his projection, not only does that mean that the Dodgers probably are doing well, the bats, but it also, I think, will be tougher for him to get into lineups. Whereas yesterday, I thought if Kershaw came in a little bit shy, instead of getting 21 points, got 17, he's probably still going to be one of the best plays.
So based on ownership, 50-50 shot for Snell. He's 50% owned. Is the likelihood then, or are you comfortable with 6-hitter lineups? Or is this now the perfect opportunity to get that reliever, given that ownership?
I think relievers are fine, and I think 6-hitter lineups are fine, especially in tournaments. And to be clear, in cash, I haven't built my lineup, but I fully expect it has Blake Snell in it, just because of the floor. But in tournaments, I don't really have a problem with 6-hitter lineups today, because I think that when you look at the Dodgers, Gonsolin is, again, probably going to go 2 or 3 innings, so it's really easy to see how he's just mediocre. Then you have Dustin May and Julio Urias both available. So but they're both. Well, I know Urias is. I'm not actually sure what May's price is, but they're Urias at least is expensive enough that you would need him to actually be good over like 3 innings to want him in your lineup. So I think it's really easy. My point being, it's really easy, I think, to see how there's no pitcher from the Dodgers that you have to have. So that basically leaves Blake Snell as the guy that you're scared of needing. And I don't think it's a lock that you need him. So I think that whereas yesterday I had 0 lineups with 6 hitters, I think I'd have some today.
I'm going to have, at this rate, 0.
Dustin May, 9,400. So, I mean, he's 94. Julio Urias is 98. They're expensive enough to where you probably need them to give you like 2 to 3 good innings.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, well, I guess their ownership is going to be next to nothing, which is helpful. Those price tags don't help, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they're guys that maybe I would get to if I'm playing 150 lineups. I would bet a lot that I don't come close to touching them in my 3 max stuff.
Okay. Anything else you're seeing right now, running any dummy crunches, anybody popping up that you think is interesting? You seeing anything different?
No, not really.
Yeah. I'm having so much trouble getting away from Snell. It's crazy. He's going to get bombed tonight. I know it. I'll be done immediately. It'll be the first inning. Betts will take him yard. Whoever the hell hits second will take him yard, and I'll just be dead in the water. Any natural cash plays that you see? We didn't really touch on that too much yesterday. What stands out most to you there from a cash perspective?
So yesterday's projections, I think, are loaded into Cruncher right now. But maybe I just need to manually change. Yeah, it keeps resetting to yesterday. So can't crunch yet. But is it working for you?
Cruncher?
Yeah.
Let me look.
Okay. I thought you'd already run some.
I did.
Okay. Yeah, because now it's just giving me yesterday. And if I even manually change the date, it just goes back to yesterday.
FC MLB. Shit.
But anyway, just from looking at pricing, I think that Meyer will be really useful. I think Austin Meadows, again, is just clearly underpriced at 5,800. Snell will be really easy to get into lineups. So I would think that those are probably the starting points. If you put those guys in at flex, it leaves you with 9,866 per position. If you make Snell the captain, you still have 8,100 per position. So I would guess that you're doing something like Snell captain, Kiermaier, Meadows, and then filling out the rest.
Well, all 3 of those things are very, very prevalent in my top ranked lineups. Margot pretty high up there, Willy Adames pretty high up there, Brandon Lau up there, and then it seems like a rotation through of the expensive guys, which was not the case yesterday. Or although I guess it kind of was, and it was just Glass now. But like the guys that I'm seeing just in my highest ranked lineups: Betts, Bellinger, Turner, Gonsolin. And if I see anybody else's name, Max Muncy a little bit. So it doesn't look like the 2-pitcher lineup is going to be essential from a cash game perspective, and it looks like you can get to one of the quote unquote good bats at the top. That would the lineup that I have at the top right now, I would expect to be my cash lineup, and that actually has Mookie Betts in it.
Yeah, so the one I'm building by hand, I'm 100 short of what would almost definitely be my cash lineup. So
well, I don't think it's going to be your cash lineup then.
No, but I mean,
unless you've got some weird PK ability to get extra money, which would be incredibly lucrative.
It's I think it's the right construction. It's just figuring out how to make it work. But I put in Snell captain, Betts, Meadows, Kiermaier, Margot. Ideally, I'd get to Will Smith, but he's $100 more. So I don't know if maybe I have to just drop Mookie to like Turner or something. But
so Betts is there, and Brandon Lau becomes the optimal for me.
Oh yeah, I guess that works perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean that it also leaves you $500 in salary, which I don't love, but I also don't think it matters.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked to see if there's like a natural upgrade to Lau. Like this is what I got generated from setting 2 uniques and a bunch of randomness and generating a GPP crunch. That is not the same thing as generating a cash crunch for me. So Lau could just be upgraded by $500, and I just don't know what it is yet because I haven't looked. But Snell captain, I don't really see a way around from a cash perspective. That'll be tough.
Yeah, I mean, just from thinking about the floor, I don't really know what like since you can build such a good lineup, like we just said, you can obviously debate over which hitters should be in it, but playing Snell at captain still gives you access to Mookie Betts, Austin Meadows, plenty Brandon Lau, like really good hitters.
Yeah.
So there's no real reason in cash to be foregoing the floor that a starting pitcher gives you to play a hitter that can very easily get 0.
Yeah, that's where it gets really scary. Because if Blake Snell goes for 15, like you're feeling pretty good in cash.
Yeah.
Just right out of the gate. You just need your 5 other guys to not be completely dead in the water.
Hoping that guy that took my 109 and played 6 hitters yesterday does that again today.
Well, today it'll make a little bit more sense at least.
Yeah, he did almost come back and beat me.
We did talk about that yesterday. So I have my crunch up here now, generically sorted. A lot of Blake Snell clear across the board. Meadows and Margot, the 2 primary captain options. I don't like the construction. Very minimal amounts of Arozarena, very minimal amounts of Corey Seager. I don't mind it. I understand why it happens. It just confuses me a little bit to cheer against. Like, Arozarena goes yard. Okay, here's a good question. Let's say Arozarena hits a solo home run. You know that he has that and does nothing else. Do you think he's in the optimal?
Yeah, probably. Like if he's not, pricing's cheap enough today that if he's not in the optimal, it means that this game just went nuts.
Right. Yeah. I guess the if that's the only run of the game, then yeah, he's in the optimal.
Probably. Well, like yesterday, I think it would have been closer because Arozarena can hit the home run, but his salary prohibits you, let's say, from getting Kershaw and Glasnow, and there's a really good chance that you need both of Kershaw and Glasnow.
And if anybody else hits a solo home run below that price tag,
right,
they're immediately better.
Right. Yeah. But today, I think that it's unlikely, I think, that both pitchers are in the optimal, or that there's 2 pitchers in the optimal, unless, one's a reliever. And so I think that getting it, if you could lock in a home run from anybody, I think you would take them regardless of salary because it's not really going to restrict what you do with the rest of your lineup.
This will be a fun conversation here. Antoine Murphy says, Arozarena auto play. I think that he might be the worst play on the slate. Other than like guys that I don't know if they're playing.
I think I'd rather play it.
He showed up least in my sim.
I get your point because he's gonna come in behind, like if you're paying up, he's gonna come in behind like Mookie.
Yeah,
I think I would probably prefer Arozarena over like Muncy by maybe a little bit.
And like I'm splitting hairs here. Mookie, Seager, Muncy, Arozarena, Wendell, all in like the 15 to 20 range. We're talking margins. A different projection system moves those guys around in order at the very least. It's not like they make one better than the other by a mile, but they're all pretty similar relative to their salary. That's where it gets tricky because it's just so hard to have him be in an optimal lineup at that price tag, given the people around him. Then he has to beat Betts. He has to beat Corey Seager. You probably need to hope that Blake Snell doesn't pitch very well, which is not ideal. Like, I don't want to say not ideal, but like there's no relationship between Snell and Arozarena other than a win bonus for Snell. And then I just get guys like Blake Snell at 60% in the utility. I'm going to have all the Blake Snell again. I'm just putting that out there now since you and I aren't on another show. We've got 15 minutes to go. Well, we have 15 minutes until 11 o'clock where the NFL show is up. Do we have any questions in chat right now? While you guys are here, there's 140 of you, 44 likes. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you guys have any questions for the next 2 or 3 minutes, we'll try to answer anything you have, and then we'll get out of here and turn it over to the football guys. Slack chat popping off right now. It's always great. 10 o'clock in the morning. Let's see. No questions. If Snell's in, I assume they're today. That's not a question for this. That's not a question for this. That's not a question. Do you think Barnes catches today?
No.
Or do you think Barnes plays today? I would say no, but he's in the projected lineup that I used.
Yeah.
Which I'm realizing now.
Well, I mean, I guess actually against the lefty, probably. I don't know if he catches or DHs, but
right. Yeah,
he's probably in the lineup and then probably gets or maybe gets pinch hit for later.
All right, here we go. We got a couple questions. We'll try to get through them. Thoughts on Pollock? He came out under his projected ownership right now, so I would be a little lighter on him. He's the if I had these correct like these lineups were correct, he's the third cheapest Dodger and would be the fourth most expensive Ray.
Wild. Yeah. I mean, everything with hitters for the most part is going to come down to ownership. Pollock certainly fits that because from a pricing standpoint, you can just make better plays. Like you can get to Brandon Lau. Austin Meadows is so much cheaper. Manny Margot is so much cheaper. So he's not someone that's going to like filter into your lineups based on optimal projection, but that will naturally drive down ownership. So if his ownership's low, like he's a good enough hitter, like you're going to get to him, but he's not someone I'd be looking at in optimals.
The next one, Meyer at captain, worked last night.
I don't think it's as good a play tonight as it was last night.
Agreed. I still think it's a good play, but
I mean, I think it's fine because I don't think it really matters. But
every one of the hitters is all like they're all 90% plus to not be the captain.
Right.
Like you're gonna fail pretty much all the time, which is tough.
I mean, I'm building a lineup now by hand just to see if Kiermaier at captain is actually something that like is beneficial or if it's just like forcing me to play the most expensive guys.
Let me see. Highest ranked one I have is Kiermaier, Kike, Meadows, Gonsolin, Snell, Betts. And that would not make my cut.
I mean, so you can make like a good lineup. The one I just kind of clicked in was Kiermaier at captain with Snell, Betts, Turner, Smith, Margot. That's a lineup that I like. But again, you can just drop Blake Snell or something, or one of those other guys, and then upgrade Kiermaier pretty easily.
I have too many Kiermaier lineups like this. Kiermaier, Margot, Turner, Bellinger, Gonsolin, Snell. That's fun. I don't know. Best hitter on the Rays. I mean, it's got to be Meadows.
Yeah. I don't know how it isn't Meadows.
Yeah. His price is just broken.
Like he's probably the best hitter on the Rays, and he's definitely the most favorably priced of the possible best hitters on the Rays.
Yeah, like I'm a fan of Arozarena and all, but the momentum taking his salary $3,800 north of Austin Meadows is aggressive.
Yeah, like he's you can think that he's just a really good player and that he's better than the steamer projections and whatever gave him. That's fine, but the chances of him being this good are very low. The most likely outcome is that he's between what he's doing now and what he was quote unquote supposed to be.
Yeah.
In which case he's overpriced right now. Meanwhile, you have a guy in Meadows who has proven that he's an above average major league hitter, and he's $5,800. So, like, I think that if you're just looking for the most talented hitter on the Rays, you're looking at Lau, Arozarena, and Meadows. And Meadows is almost 2K cheaper than Lau, who's 2K cheaper than Arozarena.
Final question coming in, Antoine Murphy, and I think it's a decent one given the way that we need to think about this slate. Assuming Kiermaier is a popular utility, could Jock as a pinch hitter be a pivot?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, it's something that I would consider more in large fields because in smaller fields, I don't need to get the 5% owned guy. I can just pivot to the guy slightly less owned than Kiermaier. But it's pretty likely. I mean, it's relatively likely that Kiermaier gets 0 points despite getting 4 at bats or whatever. So there's plenty of times where Peterson doesn't even get in the game and he scores enough. He scores the same amount of points as Kiermaier. And
Same amount of points he had yesterday.
yeah, exactly. And so yeah, I think it's fine. That's kind of what I was alluding to when I said that I didn't think it through all the way yesterday, in that there's such a high percentage of the time that your guy gets 4 at bats and still gets 0, that it was a little more reasonable than I was thinking originally to use a pinch hitter or to use a relief pitcher. The one caveat I would say is that, again, this isn't quite the same as yesterday in terms of pinch hit probabilities. I think it's relatively likely Peterson gets in at bat, but it's not quite the same because you basically knew if the Rays brought in a lefty, Peterson was out.
Yep.
There's still times potentially where, like, I don't know that they would pinch hit for Pollock, period. They probably will pinch it. Like, they'll pinch it for Kike if there's a righty coming in. They probably would pinch it for Barnes.
And so much of it
One thing
depends
to
on
keep
the
an eye
actual
on
situation of the game, too. Like, if it's 2 on with, or 2 outs and nobody
Right.
on, you don't need to do that as much as it's second and third, no outs, and you get the platoon advantage.
Right. One thing to keep an eye on if you're thinking about pinch hitters, so if you assume that Will Smith and Austin Barnes are both in the lineup, if Austin Barnes is the catcher, there's a lower probability he's getting pinch hit for than if he's the DH. Because if they pinch hit for him at catcher, that means they have to move Will Smith to catcher, which means they lose their designated hitter. If Barnes starts as the DH, they can just pinch hit for Barnes.
I don't have anything else, do you?
So one kind of side note that I noticed in cash games yesterday, and a lot of good players did it, but I thought it was a mistake. And it's one of those things that it's a very small, minor mistake that isn't likely to cost you any one day, but I just thought it was something that should have been thought through and was like a minor edge. Thinking about pinch hitting when you're making cash lineups and looking at, like medium projections, and you have 2 lineups that are close side by side. I thought it was a mistake yesterday to play the lineups that had Peterson and Renfroe over lineups that had guys that were going to get 4 at bats. Assuming they projected relatively similarly, because there was just such a high probability that the Peterson Renfroe lineups that were really popular were going to just not have 2 guys playing by the 6th inning.
So the question then becomes, what do you think of those projections? Because in theory, that should just be already in there.
Well, I mean, there's no difference between a lineup projecting for 72.8 and 72.4.
Like, yeah.
Right.
That I agree with.
But I think there's a tendency to just, and I've said it before too, because, people talk on shows about, oh, he's a cash play. And it's like one of my biggest pet peeves, because it's the stupidest thing ever, because your cash pool really should not be very big. It's basically just your top projected lineups, more or less.
Who are your top value plays? Who's probably highly owned? That's your cash bucket.
Right. But I do think that it's worth noting that doesn't mean that you have to play your actual optimal, that's your optimal by 0.2 of a point or whatever. I thought there were a lot of good players that played it yesterday. It was a 2v2 between mine and theirs, where they went Peterson Renfroe, which was one of my top lineups also. And I went Brandon Lau and Kiermaier. So, obviously my side worked because of Kiermaier, but the entire reason I chose it was that I was pretty confident I was getting maximum at bats from Lau and Kiermaier and getting half as many at bats from Peterson and Renfroe, which, again, in any one given day, it's probably not going to make the difference. or it's a coin flip. It's close to a coin flip, but I think that if you play that like 1,000 times, you do get an edge there by prioritizing the very similarly projected lineup that's going to get the most at bats.
Yeah, I think in those cases, you sort of need, like I set all of my plate appearances automatically. I estimate however many plate appearances I expect from the leadoff hitter. There's a descending order. You get slightly less for every batting order spot. It's all automatic. But for someone like Jock yesterday, I don't think that he should be projected at 100% of whatever you would expect. It should be like 70. So then if the projection system is taking account of that, I like it. I would guess most don't.
Well, so here's the thing too, and I guess
I'm sure Alex. I have no doubt Alex does.
So why I would prefer the side, even if the projection system is accounting for that, which they should be. And let's say you're accounting for that, it still projects Peterson Renfroe side a little bit higher. Mm-hmm. The reason I still prefer the other side is the floor. It's basically floor. Like the floor is obviously 0 for any hitter, but Peterson and Renfroe, even if you account for their pinch hit probabilities, are going to project well because they do so much damage per at bat. So there's a good chance that in their 2 at bats or 3 at bats or whatever, they double or hit a home run or whatever. Like, so that's going to drive the projection up. But when you're thinking about floor, you just have a better chance of getting off 0 if you get 1 or 2 more at bats. Yeah. So it's kind of like in football where you might get a slightly higher projected lineup. And it's a mistake that I made, a stupid mistake I made cash this week. And I wrote about in my lineup review article that I did, but you might get a slightly higher projected lineup by using some shitty player and a really good player, but you're putting yourself in a position where the really good player has to reach expectation or do better. Otherwise you're going to have been better off playing the 2 solid players that, equal the same salary. So it's kind of the same thing for me where I don't necessarily, you do want to think about range of outcomes, in this case at bats, amongst similarly projected lineups.
That's good, man. It's always nice to hear someone talk about this more so than just these are my picks. We hope that we're giving you a little bit more strategy for yesterday, for today, because at least for baseball, it's really difficult to just say, I like Muncy, I like Bellinger, I like Turner. These guys are all going to look really, really similar from a baseball perspective. So understanding the construction of your lineup, a lot more important than just jamming in the plays, so to speak. And that's all we've got. 10:57, we got to get out of here. NFL strategy show coming up right now. So thank you guys. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast feed, enter the giveaway at Awesemo_com, which is a Twitter account, not Awesemo.com, which is the website that you should go to /join and come hang out with us permanently. Come to Slack. It's fun. We're out of here. Good luck tonight. Peace.